Howdy. Let's start with video 3, our last video for incident response. And as I said in the last video, there is a guide for NIST, SP 800-61 Revision 2, Computer Incident Handling Guide. You know, you can always find, let's go back, let's say I don't know where this is. So I'm just going to do a Google search. And I'm going to say NIST. Well, I'm going to try to say NIST SP 800 Incident Response. And I'm going to come up with some ads, and that's not what I want. I want the guide. So anything you want to do, just go look on Google. And here, look where we get. We get to SP 800-61 Revision 2. I believe that there is something out now being reviewed. I don't know, I haven't checked lately. The 2012 date looks a little out of date. But if I want to find it, then I can go to the guide and it will tell me what I need to know about setting up a good incident response. Okay? So you always, if you're overwhelmed and say, gosh, I don't know what to do, my boss just told me to outline this, always just go and Google and always look at the NIST documents. They've just recently decommissioned several that were so technically out of date, but that's what they do. They put these documents out, they leave them there. It doesn't cost you anything, right? You're going to organize a computer security incident response capability. You're going to handle an incident. Look, it's going to tell you what to do. It's going to coordinate an information sharing, and then it's going to give you some scenarios, some data elements you need to know, glossary, acronyms, resources. It's going to help you set this up. How do you handle the crisis? How do you go through and do a change log? This is all right there for you to do, right? So you've got all this information free that you need to be, one, be aware of, but two, be able to use. Let's go back to our slides, if I can find them. So this last video is going to be on the recovery and reconstitution. And remember what I said. Sometimes the recovery is you take 30,000 machines out in the middle of the desert with a flamethrower. Now that's what I was told. Don't know if that's what it is. But you need to find the cause of the incident. You need to know which data was sensitive and subjective to misuse. Let me give you another war story. A couple months ago, I met a woman who was in HR. She does some kind of leadership communication, works for all the big companies. It's company started by her father in the 60s. She took over when he retired. 450 clients, some number of employees. They were hit by a ransomware attack, and she said she came within 27 hours of losing it all. Okay? She is a typical incident person. Luckily, they found one server that had been overlooked in an upgrade, and they were able to recover 90% of their data. 95% of their data. So she knew she had this data. She trusted her IT people. They had never run the scenario. Okay. They had never thought about what if. Backup on the cloud. I know somebody else in Houston, $500,000 damage in Harvey, came within a quarter of an inch of ruining his servers. We had talked to him, told him, you know, you need to back up on the cloud, but no. He'd made his money in liquor. He knew what he needed to do. Well, he was just darn lucky he didn't go bankrupt. So we need to figure out what to do. We need to have the plan. We need to know what data was critical, and we need to know external communications, right? What's essential business operations, complete restoration of services and operations. Did my friend that had the ransomware attack? No, she had 95%. Now, after it's been restored, they create a report of the incident to create that corporate memory, and can be used, one, to learn for future incidents, but two, to close the loop, and three, in case of investigation or lawsuits. You always want to do a follow-up and lessons learned. I mean, I didn't sit down after Harvey and say, okay, what would I do differently? But I thought out of a plan that I've been spending the last year executing in trying to say, what if this happened? Okay, why did I have electronics on a lower shelf? Why did I have things stored in paper boxes? Okay, so you take those lessons learned and you change things that are being done. And sometimes it's very useful to study other incidents. That's why I've studied Deepwater Horizon. That's why I talk about Harvey. That's why I talk about MERS. Learn from that. Don't Don't repeat mistakes. As I used to tell young entrepreneurs, please make new mistakes. I'm tired of helping people get out of the same old mistakes all the time, right? Because you do have these standards and best practices that's going to guide you. When they talk about a state of compromise, you need to always expect adversaries are active in your network. You need to practice paranoia, is what I used to tell people when I taught at U of H. You need to practice paranoia. You got to assume there's bad guys lurking, all right? So it's really unrealistic when we say security, can't do 100% security, that you're going to say, well, I know that, but we don't have any attackers in our system. Assume that you are. Operating in a state of compromise, doesn't mean you're not going to suffer a significant loss. I operate in a state of compromise because I still choose to live in the 100-year flood plan in my house in Houston, right? Decision I'm making, right? But you have to say, in the state of compromise, what can I do to prevent it? And what can I assume? In my case, this is going to happen again. In that case, you have bad guys in your network. Now, you've heard me talk about NIST, SPs. I just showed you one. This is such a wealth of information. I get kind of flabbergasted at people when they talk about ISO and this and that. I was in a cybersecurity conference, 3 or 4 years ago in Amsterdam, and they didn't know there was an American in the audience, and they made a comment about, well, we really ought to thank the taxpayers of the United States because they have the gold standard of cybersecurity documents, and they don't charge you. And at which point I raised my hand and I said, here's a taxpayer, we can line up at the bar later, you can buy me lunch or dinner. But they are considered the gold standard. People say, well, what about ISO standard, the 27000 series? Here's the problem with ISO. One is it costs money. Two is they're more aspirational and less process-oriented. A criticism of the NIST documents is they are very process-oriented. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And there's a lot of do thises. The ISO standards are shorter. They're more aspirational. Secure your systems, make sure this is done, make sure that's done. They don't lead you through the very process orientation, and they cost money. So again, about 4 years ago, I went to buy ISO standards. I go to buy them. It says the price is in francs. I do the arithmetic in my head. Not going to be bad until I get my American Express bill and realize it was Swiss francs and not French francs, okay? So there are a couple of $100 for each document. So here's the document you need to know about. Oh, look, SP 861 Revision 2. I already talked about, I'm not going to talk about these so much, but they're talking about monitoring, selecting products, patch management, vulnerability naming schemes. All of this stuff is there. So it talks about the Department of Justice also, and these are all up to date. If something bad happens, look at the FTC, look at the SEC if you're federally regulated, look at the particular agency if you're a federal agency, and always look at the Department of Justice because they're going to have a best practice document. There's a lot out there, and it says, here's what you do when bad things happen. So these indicators of compromise are artifacts left behind. And for instance, log data. We don't analyze log data intelligently. So an IOC can be tied to a specific observable event or a state of events. It's just like, what are the electronic footprints these guys left, right? You might get that from log data, other things. I'm not going to discuss these standards. I'm leaving this here in case you're interested for the indicators of compromise. But we just need to remember, cyber attacks, gone are the days of the Anna Kournikova virus and the I Love You virus and Melissa. They become complex, multi-stage, well-funded, well-thought-out, well-executed by a bunch of smart people. So the high concept of the kill chain is target specific steps with the goal of disrupting the overall process, right? I just have to kind of figure out that one weak link in the chain. Another useful resource is MITRE, which is a quasi-government. It's kind of a weird. MITRE's like kind of a company, but they're not a company, but they are a company. They're quasi-government, but they're not government. But they do a lot of techniques to improve the measurability of security. So MITRE is another one that you need to be familiar with. These are some other useful information for you. Again, I'm going to go through this rather quickly. And that's it for this chapter. Wow, we're done. I'm going to move on to chapter 23. Stay with me.